The case for digital transformation has never been more urgent. By harnessing the power of digital technology together, I believe there's no limit to what we can achieve for the world. Good morning and welcome to Ignite.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Hello from the mothership.
From Brisbane. From Japan.
We're living through a once-in-a-generation shift.
Here's the thing. The way we work has changed.
Technology has transformed more in the past few months than the last several years.
We at Microsoft are reimagining security, identity, and compliance.
Together, we are pioneering new innovations in agriculture in support of rural communities.
The workplace of the future won't be either the home or the office, but a fluid experience spanning both.
We announced a new meeting experience called Together Mode.
The only way to navigate this next phase is to continue to innovate.
But no company on earth can do it all themselves.
Jamie set a song for us to take us out.
It is a pleasure to connect with so many of you across the globe.
Coming together to solve problems.
To digitally reimagine teamwork.
Hi, Mom. I'm off to the cloud.
I still write code on weekends, man. I don't know about you.
Oh my God, this is so crazy.
I have very fond memories of playing Flight Simulator.
You're super hip and cool.
What is most important is you.
No matter who you are, no matter what your language is, every developer is welcome.
Welcome to the new normal.
I think my wife is kind of sick of me at this point.
I'm a big cat lover. That's my favorite.
There's so many cool new things.
Snacks are definitely going to be important.
I'm bringing charcuterie.
Behind every technological innovation is a person with an idea, a dream, or someone who has simply asked, what if?
How incredible is that?
Hey, it's me. It's Jay. How are you? Glad to see you. It's Azure FunBytes, and I'm back again. This time I'm by myself, and that means I need your help. I could really use your assistance in doing this today, so thank you. Please take part in the chat. If you're watching, I'd love to hear what you're up to. So I just showed you a little video from the wrap-up of Microsoft Ignite 2020, which just finished up today. I was very lucky enough to be part of it in a few ways, and let me tell you, it was a really cool event. Now that we've moved over to digital first and how we do presentations and how we meet with people, it's become ever more increasingly important to make sure that it's available to as many people as possible. So Microsoft Ignite and Microsoft Build were both digital free events. And that was really cool because so many people got to take part. I got to spend a lot of time during some of the keynotes. So during the first keynote with Satya and then eventually with Scott Hanselman's keynote, I got to go and do some of the moderation. And that was a lot of fun because when you're doing moderation for an event like that, you can only imagine how many people are all wanting to be involved. They got questions to ask of the different people who are presenting, and they want to have their voice heard as much as hearing the people that are presenting. And so I really can appreciate that. And so many people had things to ask. It was pretty impressive. And then yesterday, I did my presentation. I did a quick 30-minute session on DevOps for beginners. I really, really enjoyed it a ton. I got lucky that Zachary DePlata, who was here on the show with me before, he was my technical moderator, and he was able to help me get through a lot of the questions that the people had for me. So one of the things I want to do is I want to demo for you a little bit of what I actually did in my demo at Microsoft Ignite. So if you want to give me a few seconds, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the things that I need to get this started. And I really would love to hear from you in the comment section. So I'm going to go ahead and remind you, if you want to see my talk from Ignite, you can go to this URL. There's also a ton of really, really cool supporting content that you can get on there. So definitely check that out. Let's go ahead and let me bring up my screen. So let's go ahead and share the screen. And so while I'm doing this, one of the things I want to remind everybody is that all the talks from Microsoft Ignite are going to be available. If you go to that AKA link there, we'll see J Ignite. And so I made this as just a short link to my talk. But all the talks will be available just like this. So you'll be able to go and play it on your own time. Then there's a bunch of things that are associated with, and if you're logged in, you get all the related content. So if you're interested, that's all still there. So let's go ahead and get started. So I built this resource group yesterday, and I deployed an application. So I'm going to just go ahead and filter down just to my subscription. Let's see if I cleaned it up. I did. Cool. So I cleaned up what I'm going to be building for you today, and it's a static web app. I think I've done that on here before. I actually, you know what? Let's do something different. So yeah, that was a really cool demo to do then, but you know what? Let's do something a little different today. Why not? We're going to do some freestyle Azure stuff, and then after we do some whatever freestyle Azure stuff, I'm going to go through some Microsoft Learn modules. Hey, how's it going, Yoshi or Shayoshi? Thanks for watching. Let's do some static some freestyle Azure here, because I'm fresh off of what would happen. Excuse me. I'm fresh off Ignite, and I didn't have a lot of plans for today. So I got a brand new thing that we've never done before here today. We have never spent time with Cosmos DB. And maybe that is a cool thing that we can kind of take a quick look at. How about it? How about it, everybody? Cosmos DB. And what is Cosmos DB? So Azure Cosmos DB. It is a non-relational, fully managed database. It is global. It is single-digit millisecond response time, instant scalability, and then you have open source APIs like MongoDB and Cassandra, but you can also use some native ones to read NoSQL data with SQL. So let's talk a little bit about what NoSQL really means before we actually show you NoSQL. Okay. Let's go to the definitive guy here. NoSQL is non-relational data. The database provides a mechanism for storage and retrieval of data that is modeled in means other than in the tabular relations used in a relational database. So let's go and show you. So what does a tabular database look like? So a tabular database, actually, let's say relational. So relational database model is kind of what you're used to with SQL. And let's see if there's a visualized model of what is it. Okay, so this is a really good example of what a visualization of a relational database. And I suppose, yeah, it's kind of like tabular. It's almost like the way you would look at a Excel sheet, is that you have the key and then up here, and then you have these fields, and then you have to query based on this, and you have to join it together. And there are some integrity constraints that provide you with atomic guarantees that what you're going to do is always going to happen. If it fails, it's not going to destroy everything. You know what I mean? So SQL is a far more structured model. The database tables are meant to be in a specific, they're supposed to have a schema, and you're supposed to rely on that schema to be how the database lives and breathes and exists. And you don't really want to modify that schema because it's very difficult. You have to do migrations of data. So, and what's great about Cosmos DB and NoSQL and data in general is that the data that you could put into NoSQL can be completely unstructured. You don't need a schema. You don't necessarily need to adhere to some structure. So one of the most popular types of these are like key value stores. So very, very simple. What is a key? I'm looking for computer, and then the value would be MacBook. And that's a very, very popular type of key value store for just getting simple information and storing simple information. And so NoSQL is really good for this because it's fast. Document store, it's also really, really common. And one of the things that is very well used here is MongoDB. It's a very, very common document store. And everything in this document store is done in JSON format. And if you know JSON, it's just JavaScript Markdown. It's really, really simple. So let's look at some example JSON. So here, here's a really good example quickly of some JSON. Everything in JSON is within these brackets and then in quotations. You can see that there's very little structure to this, and the fact that at each portion of this nested data can have additional nests. So you can nest all these different parts of these documents in a single document. So it tends to be really popular using this type of format with, say, this is a really great example here. This is an example for someone used a movie. And this is a great kind of data to store in a document database because you can have the very, very simple ID, like the key, the values here, and then you can nest in here specific information. So the movie, Pride and Prejudice, the year, so all this simple basic information. But then when we get into who's actually in the movie, you have these other nested keys and values within. And that's kind of the power of using a document database. And so there are, like I said, a few open source document databases, but the one that's the most popular is MongoDB. And so we have a MongoDB API for Cosmos DB. So let's take a look at some of the product overview. Like I said, open source APIs like MongoDB and Cassandra. Let's look at the features: guaranteed speed, fast, ready for mission critical, fully managed, cost-effective serverless database, which means you can just send your serverless functions and not actually have to do a whole bunch of management for your database. That's the whole reason we use managed database services. We don't want to be in charge of backing up databases. We don't want to worry about doing upgrades. There's a lot of things that we just simply don't have time to do, and we want to focus more on application development. So all the things that happen in this particular area, and you can see how it can be globally replicated, which is huge for redundancy. You can see how all these things like the application session data, you may want to say back that up, keep it for future, create snapshots of it. Having to do that manually is no easy task. So these managed services take a lot of that overhead out of the works for you and let you focus more on building things. Analytics for ETL stuff, real-time IoT telemetry. There are all these different use cases, and you can build all your applications with it because of the different APIs. So let's go ahead and look at some of the docs. The docs, tons and tons of information about all the different APIs that you can use, and the fact that you can do simple queries using SQL, Gremlin, which is a time series database, I believe. Let me see. It's a graph database. That's right. So you could do graphing database queries. So let's just go ahead and run by one, and we'll just do a simple create a database. We'll take a look at it. Sound good? All right. So we're going to go here to create Azure Cosmos DB account. And what we'll do is we'll see a typical ARM-bound portal sign-up sheet. And what we can do is go ahead and just create a new resource group. And so we'll just call it FunBytes. Okay. And so now what we could do is we can see our instance name. So what are we going to call our account? We're going to call it FunBytes. Now we can pick the APIs. And when it's called multi-model database, it means that you can store one particular type of unstructured data, and you can choose different models to read, different APIs to read it from. In this case, we're going to read it from MongoDB. And now we can use notebooks. Notebooks, I believe it's a. Let's look up what notebooks are. Azure Notebooks. All right, we'll pass. Let's go ahead and pick a location. So that's the region we're going to want to put it in. And in this case, we're going to use East US, which is the closest to me, which is now Brooklyn. That's the other thing. I'm here in my new apartment. I'm here. I moved to Brooklyn. I missed out on y'all last week because I had to move into this place. But yeah, I'm no longer coming to you from Manhattan. I'm now here in Brooklyn. So let's keep going a little bit more. So East US capacity mode. We're not going to be using capacity mode. Now we're going to go ahead and apply the free tier discount. I'm not going to need this because I am cloud. I've got the gift of cloud working at Microsoft. So I am going to be using the do not apply, but you can use that free tier discount if you want to go ahead and give this a shot. And so now the account type will allow you to pick production or non-production. And that essentially is the kind of hardware that is behind the how much RUs that you get. So an RUs are reserve units. What are RUs? Azure. Request units, excuse me. Request units in Cosmos DB. This is essentially the cost of every single operation in Cosmos DB is expressed in a request unit. So every single one of these operations requires a certain number of RUs, and those RUs essentially equate to how much you eventually are charged. So this is a huge, deep thing. And we're sticking fundamentals today because that's what we do here. So we're going to stick a little bit more on the fundamentals, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to pick production. We're going to pick our version, which is the version of the MongoDB that's available. 4.0, I don't believe is available because it's a closed, or not closed, but it's a different type of open source licensing. And so the 3.6 and 3.2 are still under the old licensing, so they can be used here on Azure using Cosmos. So now we can look at the redundancy. So we can actually make this globally available and pair it with other regions. We can do multi-region rights, where we can actually say we want certain rights to go to certain areas of the world. Maybe that's because of latency. So what we're going to do is disable that. We don't need that. And then availability zones improve the resiliency of your application because you can choose a number of AZs in a single region. So you want to make sure that all of the databases are, or all your Azure Cosmos DB is distributed in a certain region over a number of databases. You can enable, or over a number of availability zones. You can add that redundancy by enabling this. So let's go next to networking. So The connectivity method is either a public endpoint with selected networks, all networks where you basically make it open to world, or a private endpoint. And then you can say, I want to allow access from the Azure portal and from my IP. I'll say allow because I will at some point want to maybe Mongo into the shell. So we'll do that. So let's go to the virtual network. We don't have one created for this. Let's create one. And we'll just call it FunByte. We'll go ahead and allow it to use all the defaults. If we wanted to do something else, we wanted a smaller network space, we could do that, but we're just going to go ahead and use the defaults. So we'll click OK. And so this will be the virtual network where private connections to and from Cosmos DB can come on that particular virtual network. So if I create a virtual machine and I want to access it via the private network and not over the public IP, I can basically just say, this is the IP, the subnet I'm going to be doing things over. So next is backup policy. So I love to tell people this. It's very important. If you don't have backups for databases, you're really setting yourself up for failure in the future. And the reason I say that is that you simply must have a way to restore information if you somehow or another make a critical error in how your data exists. Maybe you made a mistake. Maybe someone put in a wrong query, or I should say added something incorrectly. Whatever, it doesn't matter. The fact is, if you lose your data, you lose almost everything. You could lose an entire business just based on not having backups. And so, that being said, I really think one of the smartest things you could do is just enable backups. It takes a very minimal amount of effort. So cool, let's go next to, we'll leave all these defaults and we'll go to encryption. And data encryption is important. So we want to encrypt our data. So when it's written and read, it's decrypted over using a key, and all the transactions are considered secure. We want to ensure that every time someone accesses this data, it has to be encrypted over the wire. And so that being said, we can choose whether to have Azure manage the key, which is what I'm going to do, or if we're going to provide our own key. And so we have to provide a URI in the vault. So we have to go into Azure Key Vault. We have to submit the key there and then eventually access it here. But we're just going to use the service managed key. This is a demo. We're not going to get that deep today. So we'll go to review and create. And so it's going to take about 13 minutes to build this. And why is it going to take 13 minutes, Jay? Well, let's go ahead and click create. It's got to set up a number, just not one, a number of endpoints for your data to eventually live on. We selected availability zones, which means we want databases available in multiple AZs, which means it's got to just create more resources. That's basically why. This is a huge undertaking to do manually. I've built distributed database systems before using both, say, MongoDB. I've done it with MySQL, and it's not an easy task to kind of just jump into. And so by allowing managed services to do a lot of that work for you, you really just take a huge load off your chest. So now that we've built the database, it's going to take a little while. And while that's running, I'm going to ask anybody who's watching, any questions on Cosmos DB, any questions on NoSQL, or any other services that we talked about yet? Anybody see anything from Ignite that they liked? Cool. I'll wait for your questions. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is kind of continue along. We're going to watch this all go on, and we'll go to this resource group. And while this is building, we've got a database building. What if we wanted to connect this database to another service, say an application? What we're going to do something maybe in JavaScript. So what we can go here is go to a web app. And what we'll do is we'll put it in the same resource group. We'll give it a name. And in this case, I think what we'll call the name is FunBytes. Yeah, FunBytes. Why not, right? What do we got to lose? So we're going to pick a runtime stack. So I think I know what we're going to do. So let's go into my GitHub. I got this cool CRUD app. And when I say CRUD, I mean create, read, update, delete. CRUD is an acronym. And so let's take a look. We go to my repos. MERN-CRUD, here we go. So this is a cool little application, MERN-CRUD, that we can use. That's a simple record system for using MongoDB, Express, React, Node.js. It's pretty cool. It's really simple to set up. And so I figure, let's do this one. So what does it need to do? It's got to have a MongoDB service running, and it needs a Node.js. Cool. So let's go back here to Azure Cosmos DB. I should say create web app. So I'm going to do this right here. We're going to do node LTS 12. And then we're going to pick a region. We'll pick trusty old East US. And so now we can pick our app service plan. So that's the cost of what we're going to use for the hardware. There's a free option for you who may want it. I'm going to pick another one. So we're going to create a new one. We're going to call it JFunBytes. I'm going to go OK. And so you can go in here, you can see the different specs of the kind of hardware you can use equivalent to, or I should say the equivalent hardware, but the amount of CPU, RAM, things like that. There's an isolated one if you want to do it in, say, a private server or set of servers, so it's not no noisy neighbors. And then there's the dev test, like the free one, and then this little cheapo model. But we're going to use this P2V2. It's a pretty beefy one. Oh, and let me also show you what that comes with. Custom SSL, auto scaling, which means automatically it just ups how many instances to keep your application running. Staging slots, Azure Compute Units, memory, storage. All these things are included. So we'll apply. We'll go to monitoring. Let's enable insights so we can get information. We'll go ahead and we'll use this one, FunBytes in East US. And then we'll review and create. So we got to deploy to there, and we'll get to that. But let's create our hosting first. Cool. So our hosting is ready to go. And what I think I need to do next is I need to drop the code into this. So one thing I'm not going to get a chance to do is encrypt my credentials today. I don't have enough time to get stuff with Vault set up. We'll try that another day. But for today, what we're going to do is focus on getting Cosmos DB and a Azure Web App Service connected. So let's go ahead and go to this resource group here, because our app service is up and running. And so we've got all these services that we can access, like Deployment Center. That's what we're going to be used to deploy our app. And the thing that I need to do is I need to get my connection string set up once my database is configured. So one of the things I'm going to do first is I need to create a variable. And so what we're going to do is go here to config. We're going to go here, db.js. And there is this modules export here. This looks wrong. I think I need to revert this. I think this is an old thing that I was messing with, trying to make some changes. So let's go to this original version. And let's see this. Yeah, I was futzing around, as we say, So let's go ahead back to mine. I'm just going to make a quick change to fix that. But this is a environment variable that we're eventually going to need to set so that we can actually connect Cosmos. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this environment variable, DB, and we're going to go into our configuration, is it? Yeah. Okay. And here in configuration, we're going to see this thing called application settings and connection strings. So what we can do is add one or the other to connect our apps. I'm going to just use application setting because I haven't done anything very fancy today. And then we're going to do is use DB, and that's going to be the location of my database, or the variable, the key. We talked about this before with key value. It's a basic thing right in here. So the other thing we're waiting on, and what we can do, take a looky-loo. So we're still waiting on our Cosmos DB. So let's go ahead and we'll go to the FunBytes resource group. And then we'll take a look and see, all right, so this is still creating. And then once this is ready, I think I just need to do one or two things, and then you can get the connection string for our application right there. So while that's going on, I'm just going to put this as null for right now. Oop. And then what I'll do is I'll start working on my deployment center. So if I go here to the deployment center, oh, well, I got to do this. I got to hit save, continue. Cool. So it's going to update the settings so that I added this variable, and I'll go back and I'll change that variable once Cosmos is finished setting up. But what I can do here, now there's this preview version of deployment center. Let me see if there's a difference. Okay, I guess it's information and logging after you configure it from the, okay. The deployment center is one of the best things about Azure Web Apps. And if you hear a bunch of banging in the background, please excuse, somebody's put some stuff together here in my new apartment. Anyway, I love the deployment center. It's a super easy way to set up a full end-to-end CI/CD solution without having to build out a lot of the tools. You get it right out of the box using stuff you already know, and you can use GitHub, Bitbucket, Azure Repos, or local Git as your source control. So I'm going to use GitHub. We'll go to continue. And then what I'm going to use my build provider. So the CI/CD, continuous integration, that's the build process. We want to pick how our application is going to be built so that you can build, test, and then ensure that any of the changes you make always work and that are pushed through without any failures, so that you do unit tests and you make sure your code compiles. At that compilation, you do test against, and then you say, oh yeah, cool, my app works. Go to prod. So what I'll do is I'm going to use GitHub Actions. You could use Azure Pipelines as well, but GitHub Actions is my go-to place lately. So now what we're going to do is we can start setting up our repository. So I'll go to JDestro as my repo. I'm going to go to that MERN-CRUD repository. I'm going to pick the master branch. And actually, okay, so I got to delete an old workflow, something that I had. So let's go back here. So GitHub Actions drops these workflow files in here. So it can tell you exactly what it wants to do. So I'm going to just delete this one. I could use it, but I don't need it because I'm going to have Azure create me a new one with the deployment center. So I'm just going to go ahead, commit changes. Okay, so Let's back up. Let's try that again. Continue. We'll do add or over. Yeah, whatever. I could have done that. Okay, so our tech LTS 12. Yep. And so now it shows me the YAML that's configured or created that's going to be put into my GitHub account that's going to trigger the workflow. So basically it says anytime a push is made to the master branch, you will use a job that will run on the Ubuntu latest container, and then it'll build Node.js with Node 12 LTS. It will install it, it will build, it will test if there are any tests. I don't have any right now. And then it'll actually deploy it to Azure Web App. And this is the cool thing that gives a publish profile with a secret. And if we go to the repository and we go to secrets, you'll see that they created that there's going to be, this one's going to get removed, and I should say a new secret's going to be pushed over. So let's go ahead, go to FunBytes and click finish. And this is setting up our whole CI/CD process. Right in the Azure portal, you didn't have to write any of that YAML yourself. And so if we go back to GitHub, let's refresh this. There's our new secret that Azure created because we created a authentication when we logged into the portal. I didn't show you it live, but I already was authenticated in via Azure into my GitHub account. If you're not, it will prompt you. You can give your 2FA so you can make sure everything is secure. You will follow regular login, and then you'll have this process happen. So as you can see right now, that the deployment has been pushed, and we can go here to logs. And so there are internal logs of what was done, but we can actually go here to GitHub Actions. We can see the process. And there, add or deploy a Node.js web app. Let's take a look at what happened. So once it got triggered, and this was the trigger that was, we went to this build and deploy process. So let's look at build and deploy. It set up the job. It ran the action that we wanted to happen. So go get the repository, set up the version of Node.js 12 LTS, build using NPM, then deploy it to the Azure Web App. So it shows the deployment right here, and then the post cleanup, what happened, and then the job gets cleaned up. So let's go back to Azure. Let's go to the resource group. We'll go back to the web app. Let's click on the URL. We'll see, first time's a little slow. And also I didn't get the database configured yet, so it may not be ready. But I wanted to just, database is still down, so the app isn't up. But I just wanted to give you the general workflow of what setting up a new web app would be like. If we were finished, because I want to move on to something with Microsoft Learn. But to finish up, what we would be doing next is we would go to this Cosmos DB. We would go to the connection string. We would get the connection string for our new database. And then we would go back to here. We would go to the configuration. We would go into the application settings. We would go into the, or I should say we go into connection string. We would add a connection string. We'd say it was for custom. We provide the name and the value, which would be the connection string. We click OK. That would be presented as a variable, and then that would allow our application to connect both our database and our web app together. Cool. So we did a bunch of stuff. Geez, I forgot to share my screen there. Man, I really made a mistake. Wow, I was trying to show you all some stuff and I forgot to share my screen. That's kind of embarrassing, but that's because I didn't do a lot of prep this week, so I really apologize. And I'm actually, because of all the banging, I was super, super distracted, and I'm not too proud of this one today, so I'm going to kind of cut it short. Sorry, even the Microsoft Learn stuff, it's just too distracting with me. I threw this one together today. Next week, I hope to have a better show for you. Maybe a guest, something better. Sorry about it. Could have been better. I'll see you next time. Have a good weekend. Take care.